My name is Jane Spatcher McAlpine. I'm the Executive Director of the Simsbury Historical Society, the host of tonight's program. Thank you for attending, and boy, do we have a big crowd here. It's a full house. And so I want to thank the Simsbury Public Library for giving us use of this space. I also want to thank Simsbury Community Media for providing use of the audiovisual equipment, which is being used tonight to live stream this presentation and to also record it for the benefit of those who are unable to attend. So the Simsbury Historical Society, for those of you who don't know, was founded in 1911. We're a 501 3C nonprofit organization, and we depend on membership dues, donations, business sponsorships, and grants to preserve and promote Simsbury's rich and diverse history through community events, engagement with the public on our 2+ acre museum site in the center of town, and to offer programs such as this one. The Historical Society has thousands of documents and artifacts in collections and archives, facilitating research by historians, educators, and interested individuals looking for information about local history and topics like Pilfershire. So we are honored to partner with the Simsbury Land Trust. While the Historical Society focuses on preservation of Simsbury's more than 350 years of past history and today's history in the making, the Land Trust focuses on preservation of open space and maintenance of several hiking trails, which I'm sure we all have enjoyed at one point or another. As a follow-up to this talk, the Land Trust will be leading guided walks with tonight's speaker along the McLean Game Refuge West Ledge Trail through Pilfershire later this fall. Please visit the Simsbury Land Trust website for more information. To learn more about the Simsbury Historical Society and volunteer opportunities, please stop by the literature table at the back of the room, visit our website at simsburyhistory.org, or feel free to stop by and chat with me at the end of this program. So let's get started. Allow me to introduce our museum administrator and archivist, Barbara Strong, who will say a few words to kick off tonight's presentation, Pilfershire, Mystery or Misunderstood.
Good evening. You can hear me, yes. A couple of years ago, Tom Yannick wandered into my archives where I have all these old papers and photos and maps, and he brought a sense of curiosity and a sense of adventure with him. And this has inspired me for all this time, and he was very enthusiastic about this subject. He's now researching other subjects for the future. It's been a pleasure working with Tom, and I know you're all going to enjoy his presentation.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Jane, and welcome, everyone. What a great crowd we have today. It's awesome to see. Again, my name is Tom Yannick, along with Jeff Bush and Dave Jackson, both of which couldn't be here today. We would like to thank you all for being here, including the ones live streaming. We really appreciate all of you showing up, but we especially appreciate your interest in Pilfershire. My interest in Pilfershire started 2 years ago when a friend of mine asked me to go for a walk in the lost village of Pilfershire. Now, I've been living here 30 years, and I have never heard of any lost village of Pilfershire. So I did go see Barbara Strong at the Simsbury Historical Society, and I asked her, well, what do you know? And she says, really not that much, but she had this paper, The Homes of Pilfershire by Jeff Bush. So I contacted Jeff Bush, I contacted Dave Jackson, and together we all decided Pilfershire needed more research. How many of you have walked in McLean Game Refuge, the West Ledge Trail in Pilfershire? How many of you walked? Great, quite a few. We hope our presentation tonight inspires all of you to walk the trail with new insights and a new perspective. Of course, we have so many people to thank for their support for our project. Again, Jane and Barbara at the Simsbury Historical Society, Amanda Thompson and Fred Feibel with the Simsbury Land Trust, who are leading some walks next month. Our research is ongoing. So if you have anything to add, I please ask that you wait until the end of the presentation so I can get through the material and answer questions. Your cooperation will be greatly appreciated. With that, let's talk Pilfershire. Back a few months ago, I had this aha moment. I was listening to Carla Bella talk about her book, The French Paymaster. And I had this awkward realization of how storytelling and facts can be blended together to form historical fiction. And it got me thinking, Pilfershire, is it mysterious storytelling? Is it misunderstood facts? Social media has an answer for this, of course. It is loaded with stories of haunted trails and ghosts. Like this, from Kristen. Something drove the villagers of Pilfershire to act monstrously. Something made these people murderous. And then perhaps their shared fear and guilt made them flee. And this one from Kathleen, a Simsbury resident who once visited the Pilfershire Trail, swore she was followed home by the ghost of a young girl. A quick check of what we know about Pilfershire suggests ghosts should be plentiful. Today, we would like to present a different perspective. Today, we will define Pilfershire, but to really understand it and appreciate it, we will talk about Puritanism's influence on early colonial settlers. We will meet one of them, Jonathan Latimer, and lastly answer the question, what happened up there? Why are there abandoned homes? Quick spoiler alert, it's not because the people were murderous or monstrous. Here's a map of Simsbury in 1670. The black outline shows the borders at that time. Of course, it included most of Canton, Granby's, a small section of West Suffield, and a small area of Bloomfield called Scotland. Let's jump ahead 200 years. Here's a map of Simsbury in 1873. The black outline shows that Simsbury is much smaller now because all those other towns have become independent. But something's a little peculiar here. Can you see this yellow triangular area in Canton? I'll get back to that. This may be hard to see, but what we're looking at is an original document signed the 19th of April, 1873, by Canton residents with very familiar local surnames like Holcomb and Higley and Matson, Latimer, Stoddard, Case, Bacon. These 15 Canton residents petitioned the Connecticut General Assembly to go back to Simsbury. And I quote, "Due to the great distance and badness of public highway, over mountainous and at times impassable bad roads, it is very inconvenient to attend electors and other public meetings in Canton. And most of our business, such as merchandising, schooling, post office business, and social interaction, is in Simsbury." So how did the rest of Canton react? They opposed this, of course. They remonstrated. 131 Canton residents signed their own petition forcefully protesting in opposition to this petition. And the result was, well, apparently the bad roads and inconveniences swayed the court because what we see here is a red rebordering line over an 1869 map. To the left is Canton. To the right are those 15 households that went back to Simsbury. That is Pilfershire. Remember the yellow triangular area in that other map? That is Pilfershire. Ooh, wait a minute. Oh, this is a close-up of that map. And on there you could see the red dots here show the locations of some of those homes. Pilfershire was annexed by Simsbury. It was taken or pilfered from Canton. Thus, it gets its nickname. Immediately after the annexation, Dr. Noah Webster Holcomb, one of the signers of the petition, referred to his medical practice as being in the Farmville section of Simsbury. The earliest documented reference to Pilfershire of Simsbury that I could find comes from a 1945 article in the Farmington Valley Herald with the headline, "Pilfershire 4-H Club Explains Its Novel Name." Unfortunately, other than the Pilfershire reference, the article is full of inaccuracies. And I quote, "The name Pilfershire came from a town consisting of a store, a church, and a hotel." Well, Pilfershire at one time did have a small general store, but there was no hotel, there was no church, and there certainly was no town of Pilfershire. Another reference to Pilfershire comes from a 1934 aerial photos that label the area Pilfershire. But we don't know when that label was applied. Was it applied in 1934? Was it applied in 1944? We don't know that. So exactly who and when the area was first called Pilfershire requires further research. Pilfershire is not isolated to the abandoned homes we see on the West Ledge Trail in McLean Game Refuge. Original Pilfershire houses still exist on North Canton Road, West Ledge Road, and Woodchuck Hill Road. However, of the 18 original homes that were within Pilfershire, only 5 remain standing today. You may have been familiar with the phrase, the lost village of Pilfershire. Although this description piques one's attention, certainly it piqued mine, Pilfershire is not actually an abandoned ghost town or village like the ones we think of in Western America. Pilfershire is simply an area of 15 farm properties that were originally part of the greater community of North Canton, and in 1873 was annexed back to Simsbury. But much more significant than just defining Pilfershire as an annexation is what it represents. Pilfershire represents early colonial settlers struggling to survive up there on West Mountain in West Simsbury, and eventually those farmers struggling to survive just to earn a living. Let's see what caused the people to first settle up on West Mountain in West Simsbury. Here we see a replica of the original Simsbury Puritan Congregational Church meeting house, and it sits on the property of the Simsbury Historical Society today. In 1620, English pilgrims sailed to the New World and established the Plymouth colony. Approximately 1/3 of these passengers were separatists, English Protestants who dissented from the Anglican Church of England. An influx of English Puritans soon followed. Puritans sought to purify or further reform the Anglican Church from its Catholic Church traditions. Fearing persecution, many Puritans became separatists themselves and settled the Boston-Salem area by 1630, establishing the Massachusetts Bay Colony. After disagreements with the religious doctrine and government created by Puritan leadership in Boston, Thomas Hooker brought his congregational branch of Puritanism to Hartford in 1636 and established the Connecticut colony. Throughout all these New England colonies, Puritan leadership established order and government in this new land. Their government was a theocracy based on Puritan religious beliefs. Therefore, Puritanism, both through church worship and in society's government, had an enormous influence on developing colonial New England, as well as shaping the lives and character of all New Englanders. By the early 1700s, however, Puritan beliefs and leadership were beginning to be challenged right here in Simsbury from 1715 to 1735. A very significant meeting house controversy took place. Simsbury needed to build a new meeting house, having outgrown this one. Indecisions by Puritan leaders as exactly where to build the new meeting house led to debates that took 20 years to resolve. Years of disagreements bred discord and resulted in the creation of 3 ecclesiastical societies. Here's a map exactly at that time, and it shows the result of that 20-year debate, the 3 ecclesiastical societies. Wait a minute. We'll get there. Here's in Simsbury Center, the First Society, another one that was formed up here, the Northwest Society in Salmon Brook area, and the Turkey Hills Society. Of course, the creation of these ecclesiastical societies would eventually lead to some brand new towns of Granby and East Granby. Local historians agree that this meeting house controversy was the major reason for the settlement of West Mountain. But additionally, New England farm families at this time were averaging 7 to 10 children. For example, Ensign Samuel Humphrey of Simsbury had 19 children. Not all with the same wife. But imagine Christmas at that house. The point is, farmland in the fertile river valley of Simsbury was disappearing. The West Simsbury Wilderness, which included West Mountain and Canton today, became the next western frontier. Part of that wilderness includes the area of Pilfershire, and it shows up on this map over here. These settlers were hardy and resilient men and women. Their Puritan traditions inspired ingenuity and inventiveness and led to frugality and thriftiness. These were men and women with a powerful work ethic and a strong will to survive. They were Yankees, of course, like perhaps some of you discovered you are after taking this little survey, which I hope you had fun with. Let's meet one of these settlers. Here we are in the Pilfershire section of McLean Game Refuge. Welcome to the Jonathan Latimer farmstead. Yeah, it's a bit overgrown, but what we see here is a nice stone wall on this side. There's a stone wall on this side, and in between is a dirt road, and a house that he built up on that knoll. Imagine now the earthly aroma of burning firewood as smoke spills from the house chimney. We hear shouts of "haw" and "come up" as Jonathan directs his oxen to plow in a distant field. Peeking inside the house, there's Jonathan's wife, Rachel, standing near the kitchen hearth. The large open stone fireplace is charred black from years of constant fires. She is stirring something within a large iron pot that dangles from a chimney crane over a crackling fire. Let's take a closer look. Here we are up on that knoll. What we see in the foreground here are some stepping stones. Likely there was a side entrance to the kitchen there, because right behind us in this photo, it's the well. And further ahead is the cellar hole. Here we are right up there. Note the horizontal, nicely stacked stones form the foundation of the chimney for this house. We're looking down into this crumbling cellar hole. This house foundation once stored bushels of corn, oats, and rye, and root vegetables like potatoes, turnips, and parsnips. It also stored barrels of pork and fish preserved by salting. And certainly there were casks of hard cider. Now, Benjamin Franklin was famous for saying, "An apple a day keeps the doctor away," right? But he also wrote, "It is indeed bad to eat apples. It is better to make them into cider." Well, pretty much all our ancestors agreed with him. They drank a lot of cider, hard cider. This Latimer family is a good representation of the other Pilfershire families. So let's learn a little bit more about them. After marrying in 1760, Jonathan, aged 22, built this house for his newlywed wife, Rachel. The land was completely forested when they arrived, so much clearing of trees was needed to provide wood and fire for fires and lumber, as well as to create fields for growing crops. Jonathan and Rachel spent their entire married lives together in this house, eventually dying here. Records show this farm had oxen, dairy cows, sheep, and pigs, and planted fields of corn, oats, rye, and hay. But for many years, this farm had apple orchards. Jonathan built a cider mill with a distillery. He produced hard cider and cider brandy. He used these products to barter for services from neighbors or to sell at Adams General Store just down the road in North Canton. Jonathan and Rachel raised 4 children. Jonathan Jr. was born on this farm. He eventually purchased the farm from his father and lived his entire 88 years of life here. During his lifetime, Jonathan Jr. buried his mother and father, as well as his wife Sarah and their children, an unnamed 2-year-old and a daughter, Callista, aged 11. Jonathan Jr. died in 1852 with no heirs and minimal possessions. Among his possessions, his probate inventory states he had owned 1 pair of pantaloons, 1 straight-bodied coat, and 1 hat. But he did have some extra wool, so he could have made another hat if he needed one. Sister Rachel married Captain Ariel Case, and they lived in the Terry's Plains section of Simsbury. Ariel was one of 16 siblings, but he and Rachel only had 2 children. Lodama married John Edgerton, the local blacksmith. Their house and blacksmith shop were within Pilfershire and are still standing today. Lodama died at the age of 26, apparently childless. John Edgerton soon remarried, had 6 children with his new wife, and moved his family to Madison County, New York. and the youngest daughter, Sophia. She married Thomas DeLawn Mills of Becket, Massachusetts. In the summer of the year 1800, they moved to the Midwest, becoming one of the first settlers in Nelson Township of Ohio. The simple answer is, by the year 1900, this land had lost its usefulness and value for farming. By 1900, local farming was being displaced by other jobs in places like Collinsville Axe Factory, Ensign Bickford Fuse Factory, and the mills in Unionville and Terriffill. These manufacturing jobs were appealing to younger generations of farm children because the workday was shorter and the income was steady and reliable. Other local farmers, like we learned with Sophia and DeLawn Mills, took their farming lifestyle west to larger and more fertile land. New England farm fields, being restricted by the stone walls they built 200 years earlier, struggled to compete with the enormous farm fields of the Midwest. The rocky, thin soil of Pilfershire, along with this industrialization time, proved challenging for many to sustain a farm living. Although Pilfershire contains many modern houses today, some of the originally built houses turned to cellar stones for various reasons. The Jonathan Latimer house that we visited earlier was sold. It then became left unoccupied, and the story is that some hunters built a fire in there and apparently accidentally burnt it down, and it was never rebuilt. Another house I'm aware of was sold to a neighbor and left unoccupied. The neighbor kind of took all the boards from it to repair barns in the house and left the house to slowly fall into disrepair. The largest house in Pilfershire and its barns were removed and to build the High Ridge Road housing development that we see up off of Westledge Road today. I'm aware of one house in McLean Game Refuge that George McLean purposely took down, likely because he saw no use for it in his wildlife preserve. That being said, we are so very lucky to be able to still see these stone cellars, stone mill foundations, and stone walls in McLean Game Refuge to allow us to reimagine these farms, reimagine colonial farm living, and connect to our community's colonial past. Oh. Okay. I guess I jumped ahead of that. Here we go. So, mysterious or misunderstood. On one hand, stone cellars are mysterious. Stone cellars tell us that people lived there. People were born there, people grew up there, people were cared for there, people grew ill there, people died there. But what they don't tell us are the joys and happiness and dreams, as well as the fears and anxieties of the people that lived there. On the other hand, the misunderstood truth of Pilfershire is revealed in its historical facts. So, mysterious, misunderstood, a little bit of both? I'll leave that up to you to decide. Thank you for your attention. I don't know if we have any questions.
Well, I haven't asked if we have any questions.
Oh,
I'm sure there are questions. If I can turn this on. Does anybody have a question? Okay, I'm going to go way back there because he raised his hand first. And then I'll.
You said that there were 5 houses still standing?
yes.
Can we see any of them when we drive around now?
Can you see them?
Are they still, which ones are they?
Sorry.
Yes, people are living in the 5 houses. And the blacksmith shop was converted into a house. And I don't know if I feel comfortable telling them yet where they are, but there are.
Is this on? This is not. Getting it on. I was going to hand it to you. Maybe it's the little thing down there.
Can you hear? Okay. Having hiked up there, there are so many stone walls
Yes.
in that area. And just wondering, would that have been used for to contain crops or animals? Or, I mean, it's an extensive system of walls up there.
A little of both. Again, there was actually a law in Simsbury that people had to build fencing to contain their livestock. Now, originally it could have been just wood fencing, but eventually the people plowing their fields went, wow, there's a lot of rocks in here. I'm going to push them to the side and line my property line or contain livestock or contain their fields. So yes. But the amazing thing is just think of the sweat equity it took for these people to move these rocks and by hand put them all to make that wall. It's amazing.
Are any of the Pilfershire residents buried in the Simsbury graveyard?
Absolutely. There are.
How many family names do you have from Pilfershire?
I know of. Okay, there's a few Latimers, Giles Latimer, Miles Latimer, and there's others that ended up getting buried in North Canton graveyard. But if you really want to know exactly, ask me later. I'll look it up for you and can get you that information. But off the top of my head, that was.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
Carol Labella here.
Yes.
As you mentioned, I'm historical fiction and you're historical fact. That was a lovely presentation. Really fascinating. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for your kind words.
You inspired me to look into other abandoned villages here in Connecticut. So, of course, we have Dudleytown in Cornwall. We have Gay City in Hebron. So I want to make sure that I understand, because you've obviously put a lot of work into this. What would you say is the single most important factor that drove the people from Pilfershire? Was it the lack of arable land? As you said, the land had passed its use. Was it the attraction of industrial careers? What would you say is the single most important factor in your view?
The fact that the land was hard to work with, and there was that pressure of people making more money doing other things, just being able to compete. The large, there were stone walls. So the new farm equipment that the people in the Midwest with big plows that they could just go forever, you couldn't use them in the small little areas that were stonewalled in. So it got really challenging, and that's the reason.
You said it started out as 15 houses when they did the remapping.
Correct.
You later mentioned there was a general store. At its maximum, at the time when Pilfershire had as many inhabitants and houses, what was the size? How many houses were there?
Okay, that's where I'm coming up with 18 original houses. Now remember, we're looking at a time frame of houses from 1740 to 1873, where it gets pilfered. So there were houses added, but at its max, it's 18 houses that were there.
All right.
A lot more houses now.
You have some idea of the acreage that made up Pilfershire? Square miles, or wasn't it that large?
That's a good question. I don't know exactly the acreage. It's the sliver I told you there. So I don't know. Would have to add all that up. But remember, it extends from the Granby border and comes down through all of that area of McLean Game Refuge, hops on to Westledge Road, comes down, and then veers off onto Woodchuck Hill Road. So I'm sorry, don't really know an acreage for you.
It's not really a question, but we have one of those houses, and we replaced the window. And we found a journal from, I don't remember the year, it was 20 years ago, about 1780 or so, and it described a women's journal, and it had articles about raising sheep and wool preparation. There was a hymn, some education for the children. So we put it back in the window and sealed it up.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you for
I'm gonna
sharing.
come to talk to you. I saw a hand down here. Okay. Trying to get up and down the aisles here. There you go.
It's probably not part of Pilfershire, but the Simsbury Reservoir is just below,
Yes.
and that leads to Hot Brook coming down. And when you walk in there in the Simsbury Land Trust property, there is some sort of mill or a lower dam. Do you know what that structure is or was?
I don't know the particular one you're talking about, but it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
There was a lot of the rivers were dammed up at one time. Originally, when the Native Americans were here and all the Farmington River was flowing like crazy, there were fish galore. But then when the settlers came in, they wanted to survive. They would build a little dam to create a quick sawmill. And pretty soon, all these rivers and streams were dammed up and the rivers got smaller and smaller. So to see something in there, you're lucky. That's good. But I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
You'll have to find out and tell us. Anybody else? Oh, great.
You mentioned that the road situation kind of triggered a lot of their petition. I know of Garrett's staircase. Could you speak more about the road situation, or if you know anything about it?
What's your name?
David?
David, thank you for asking that question. Because if anybody knows the answer why that's called the Garrett Stairs, I'm here, I'll accept it. Because I have tried to figure that out. But I'm glad you brought that up. So I showed in there a dirt road. And remember, all of these were dirt roads. So that dirt road led to, if you've walked the trail that you enter in from West Ledge Road, that's a dirt road. You walk in and then it splits off and goes. Well, just imagine all that paved West Ledge Road was a dirt road as well. It was actually called Hillside, was the name of the road originally, the dirt road. And Pilfershire Lane was originally called Alford Crossing. But they changed the names. I don't know if that answered, did you want more information than that?
This triggers a few more questions, so we'll probably have a conversation after. But I guess kind of the road situation was causing an issue with their connection to probably the North Canton community. Knowing Garrett Staircase connects us to Ridge Road, which would now come out into K Street.
Correct. I do know that. I know something about that. That right when Canton became Canton in 1806, Jonathan Latimer petitioned to have, again, the people who have walked West Ledge Trail and then you hit a stop and take a right and you go down. If you go left, Jonathan Latimer petitioned Canton to build a road, the rest of the road up, that did connect with Ridge Road. So that was his doing. And remember, they were really part of North Canton. That was their community. North Canton is where there were some churches, there was a hotel, there was a tavern, there was maybe two taverns. I'm doing research on taverns. And a sawmill. That was the closest center for those people up there.
Thank you.
Okay. So, walk around.
They call that the Stagecoach and Albany Turnpike Road, which I'm not sure if that's incorrect.
Your assumption is correct. It is incorrect. Albany Turnpike, Route 44, that was the road. That was major league road for the stagecoach. Now, as time went on, stagecoaches also carried mail. So there was mail delivery. There could have been some local routes that went on that road. Maybe they went from Simsbury, cut up there, and, went to Harwington or wherever else. I don't know. There's some easier ways to get there than to use that road. So maybe, but not like.
It's pretty deep in some sections north of Latimer's house, which indicates that it might have been used quite a bit for many years.
There's an erosion as well.
Right.
So, don't know. But I really don't think, I have a hard time believing that it was really used for a stagecoach, carrying stagecoach, unless it was a small local thing. Definitely not the Hartford to Albany Trail.
Do you know when the McLean estate or family acquired ownership to the property up there, and was it in piecemeal or?
Yes, it was. Starting maybe just before 1900 and continuing up through maybe 1925, a whole bunch of transactions of getting land.
Because you wonder if that explains why there's the appearance of an abandoned community on the Simsbury side, but we've got the same difficult to farm land on the Canton side, but you don't have the abandoned community there.
Off of that trail, off the Garrett Stairs, there weren't any other houses built. Jonathan Latimer's, then to Ridge Road, or wherever you were talking about, just went down, and then at the bottom of the hill, somebody lives in that house at the bottom of the hill off of Ridge Road.
So there wouldn't have been farms all the way up this?
There were, it was farmland. Maybe I'm missing your question. Why weren't there other abandoned houses?
Why do we have the ruins or the abandoned community on the Simsbury side and not on the Canton side?
I don't know. just how they drew the line. They drew a rebordering line, and you lost, or I don't know what happened.
Reed Hill is not considered part of Pilfershire?
Reed Hill? I don't know. Is that in Canton?
It's part of McLean's.
No.
And are there any photographs? Did McLean take any photographs before he knocked down the last house?
No. But again, they're luckily, and if you go on the Pilfershire Walk, there's going to be much more detailed information about the houses that we walk up to a cellar. But no, and again, he wanted to have a wildlife preserve. And so he took it down so that the secondary growth of trees could grow in and could have birds, animals, and so on. We don't have much more time left, unfortunately. Got to wrap this up. So any glaring question left? I do.
That's to the land trust, or not us.
Voila. Thank you.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through
local programming,
education, and live broadcasts.
SCM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings,
and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SCM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions. And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SCM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth,
and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
for generations to come.
Visit our website
or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media,
where your town,
your schools,
and your government come together.